When a component is added on the screen, various methods get triggered internally, which we can use for different purposes. If you go to the documentation, you can see there are various methods, lifecycle methods, component will mount, did mount. So we'll see the ones which are used majorly in action. Alright, now let's go back to our app.js and let's work on our older app where we had displayed two company names, which is app.js. So go to app.js, replace routing app with app. Right, save it, make sure it displays the two companies. Yeah. Okay, now let's go to the app. The first method that gets called is component will mount. So this is an initial method which will get called just before the component gets added on the screen. So let's log a message. And after the component is added on the screen, and once it renders these elements on the screen, it will call another method called component did mount. Okay, so let's log another message here. Save it, refresh the page. There it is. So this was called just before the render, just before the component was added to the screen, and this method was called after the render, after the component was added to the screen or the DOM. Alright, there are occasions where we update the DOM based on our data and re-render the screen. So that's when these two methods get called, which are component will update, which will get called just before the component gets updated on the screen, and then there's this method called component did update, which will get called after the component gets updated. To see this in action, we have to update the component, that is the UI that we see on the screen. And to do that, let's take out this input. Let's rename this button to change Google, and on button click, let's rename this name right here, Google, to something else, so that we change the state of the component, which in turn updates the UI by calling the render method. And that's when we get to know that these two methods get fired. Alright, so go to button, on button click, grab this array first from the state, and once you have this local variable here, manipulate it, take the first index, which is this object, and in that object grab the name and then rename it to alphabet. Now you have changed this local variable here, but it won't get reflected within the state. If you want this change to reflect in the state, you need to call this method called this dot set state. This is how we set the states in React. We set initial state like this by giving this dot state equal to some value, but we cannot give that here when we are manipulating. So this won't work. Alright. This is how it's meant to be. So take this company is what we want to change, and we want to assign this local companies variable to this companies. This is the traditional way of assigning new value to the objects, but in ES6 if you have same variables, then you can just type it like this, which is same as this one. Alright, now looks fine. Now let's log a message here as well. Alright, all looks fine. Let's save it, refresh the page. When I hit this button, this should get renamed and it should display those two messages just up before update and after update. Okay, click the button, there it is. The name Google got replaced with Alphabet, and React also fired these two methods, component will update and component did update. Alright, there's another method called component will unmount, which will get called when we remove this component from the DOM. Let's log a message. Save it. Now we cannot remove the component within component, so let's remove it in here in the main app. Let's set a timer. Let's call a function remove app after maybe 3 seconds. Let's write the function here. Just like how we render app component to the DOM's main app div, we have a method called unmount component at node, and we need to give the div from which we need to remove our component, which is a main app. Okay, save it, refresh the app, and after 3 seconds you should see that this entire app will be removed from the DOM, and React also calls the method component will unmount and display the message in here in the log. Refresh. Oops, I forgot to give the name here. Okay, save it, refresh. There it is. So after 3 seconds the app was removed and the relevant method was called. So those were the important lifecycle methods of a React component. Stay tuned and subscribe. Cheers.